Unfortunately, in this video, it is about leaks. So frustrating. So I'm working away here on the VFR 750 the last couple of weeks. Over the weekend, I installed my Black Widow full exhaust system, and in the middle of doing it, I noticed that what looks like a potential leak. So we have a little bit of a spot here on the ground. So something is leaking. It looks like a coolant leak, and it looks like it's occurring somewhere around the water pump. So I did a coolant flush a few weeks ago on the bike, and I did remove this pipe here because some coolant gets trapped in this little depression in the pipe here, and I just removed it, and I removed the radiator as well just to get every last drop out of it, and I replaced it, and I suspected maybe that was it. And although it's not perfectly dry, I could probably tighten it up a little bit better. I don't think that's the cause of my coolant leak, or what appears to be a coolant leak. So then I thought, okay, maybe when it was interfering with the water pump, putting the pipe on, it just some slight movement on the water pump cover, and that messed with the seal slightly, and it started leaking. Or maybe the bolt I put back on, this little bolt here where you open it up to let the coolant out, maybe I didn't close that back up properly. But it doesn't seem to be the bolt, it doesn't seem to be fully from this, so there is, it's not fully dry. So I was down to, okay, maybe it's the seal. So let me just show you what I can see. So there's definitely some coolant. It looks like coolant just here. See, you can see a drop. Okay, so let me get a piece of paper here and just touch it and see. So that flows like water onto the piece of tissue. It's even yellowy colour as well, which makes me think that it is coolant. So let me just clean that off and let's just see if we can spot any coolant dripping down. I would like to believe that that's where it's coming from, because then it might be, worst case scenario, just tighten up a bolt or replace the sealant for the water pump cover, which is probably inexpensive. But I've actually noticed then that there what looks like more coolant up here, which is very strange. I haven't been able to figure out why the hell there would be coolant up here. It's not like I would have splashed it all over the place. So let me just do a test. So you can just see a drip. Now I've checked up here above it, and everything is dry, and there isn't really any where the coolant could come from up here. It's my exhaust pipe, rear exhaust pipe there. We've got the rear cylinder, we've got the alternator, we've got the front cylinder, and it's all nice and dry, and there's no coolant pipes. The only coolant pipe is this one here that feeds into the water pump, and from the water pump it pumps the water through the engine, or the coolant through the engine from here. So up through the engine, and it goes out the other side, up near the top. I think it comes out at the thermostat, and then back into the radiator. So I am bewildered as to why there's coolant here. So what is this? This is the hydraulic clutch slave cylinder. This is the speedo sensor, and this is the cover for the drive chain and the front sprocket. So the front sprocket is just behind here, so there's the chain you can see leading up to it, and this is the front sprocket cover. Now I'm wondering potentially then is the hydraulic slave cylinder, is that leaking? I'm not 100% sure. It doesn't look like it. It looks like it's like if it was, you'd probably feel it in the clutch when you pull the clutch lever. And when I pull the clutch lever, it feels nice and firm. I'll probably open this up now. There's tell them 3 little bolts. I'll remove those. I can just take the housing off and inspect it. I suspect it's going to be quite dirty in here anyway, but speedo sensor only has to come off to get the sprocket cover off, and I'm trying to find a reason to not remove that sprocket cover. I'm trying to find a reason why there would be what looks like coolant. So I'm going to do my paper test and just stick it up here. Let's see what sort of a fluid this is. So I don't know if you can see it, but it's a watery yellow fluid. So I don't know, it's rather strange. Now this area is absolutely manky anyway from all the grease and what appears to be coolant, mainly from the drive chain, which has built up over a period. So I'm going to take this off. I'm going to take the hydraulic slave cylinder off. I'm going to remove the speedo sensor. I'm going to remove this cover, and I'm going to give it a good cleaning out anyway, because I want to clean up this engine. It's hidden under the fairings, but I would like to see it clean, and then it just helps over time to watch for any leaks. You can't see what leaks are here or where they might be coming from when everything is just caked in grease and dirt and gunk. Now with the VFR 750, particularly with the R model, I don't know about the earlier models of the VFR 750, just behind, just if I can't really show it to you with the camera that easily, I'll try, but just in here is the back where the water pump shaft feeds. You can just about see it in there. Okay, there's your water pump. There is a shaft up in here behind this little bar. It's just up in there, and that's the housing for the shaft that drives the water pump. And I can't show it to you because it's so hard to see it, but there is a little opening. Okay, so the little shaft that from the engine that feeds to the water pump, which powers the water pump as the engine's turning, it's turning that shaft which is connected to the water pump. That little shaft is probably the length of my finger, I suppose, maybe a little bit longer. And in the engine there is oil, and in the water pump there is coolant, and you don't want the two of them mixing. There is a coolant seal on one end of the shaft on this end, and then on the far end of the shaft they're probably, I don't know, I haven't seen it, I haven't taken it off, but they're probably maybe 2 centimeters, maybe an inch apart, maybe a little bit more. There's another seal on the shaft which is an oil seal to keep the, so you want to keep the oil in the engine and you want to keep the coolant in the cooling system, and you don't want them mixing. Now if either of those seals, the coolant seal or the oil seal, fail, the coolant will get past the coolant seal, and it could obviously, if the oil seal failed as well, then coolant could get into the engine or vice versa. engine oil could get into the cooling system, and you don't want that. So there's a little hole in the housing. So if the coolant seal fails, the coolant gets past the seal, but it, instead of getting into the engine, it flows out this little hole which is underneath here. It's only, I wouldn't say it's microscopic, it's quite small. So I did check to see if it was that little hole where the coolant could be coming from. If you see coolant flowing in no obvious area, there's a little hole underneath here. Or it could leak oil. If the oil seal fails to stop oil contaminating the coolant system, the oil will flow into the shaft housing and it will flow down through that little hole as well. So it's a neat little trick on these Honda engines to prevent contamination of the cooling or the lubrication system. But it's perfectly clean underneath there, despite the fact that it's just nothing but gunk everywhere here. That little hole is nice and clean. So I am really confused as to why there's coolant all over here. I will clean this up. I'm going to use engine degreaser. I'm going to clean this whole area. I'm going to take off these little pieces here. They're nice and easy to take off and put back on. I'm going to take off this cover and just degrease the whole area. I'm going to then put some wipes underneath. Keep an eye on the underneath here. Put some wipes underneath here and just monitor it over a day or two. Okay, start off with some Muck Off motorcycle cleaner. Just started off cleaning it. Okay, so leave that to soak in, and then I'll rinse it off. Next I'm going to take some of my engine and parts degreaser and I'll give the place spray it on, and I'll just give it a little bit of a clean it with a little small brush, a little toothbrush or something like that. Okay, so I've used a little bit of a brush here just to clean it off, brush it down. It's not perfect, it's not perfectly clean, but it's actually as clean as I can get it with that brush. Still see little bits of dirt here and there, but I'll just dry it down. So I need to start removing parts. Just take an 8mm socket. Two little bolts. I'll leave this speedo sensor on. Sure they don't fall into that bucket of gunk. So it's just a hexagon shaped little plastic piece. I don't think that's going to fall off. It just fits onto the little bolt. There's 3 little nuts or bolts holding on this. Shouldn't be too tight, so if you feel that they're very tight, just be careful you don't break them. And a little bit tight. Just remember, reach it and go. same length. No, they're different length. So top one is longer. So I'm going to place them in a certain order. And that one's quite short. I'm just checking that there's no washers or anything like that. So this should just come off easy enough. It's quite wet there. That doesn't come out of that. Let's see. Let's turn that around. Quite a bit of gunk. I'll clean that off anyway. Just remove those two nuts or bolts. Quite tight. Better not mix these up. Here's my top one. This is the bottom one. It's a short one. So my housing should just come out now. Should be two little dowels. So there's one dowel. There's the second dowel. So look at that. Completely encrusted with gunk. So that gasket is ruined. I'll probably have to get a new gasket. This whole area is absolutely filthy. So I will now have to clean that off as well. Okay, so with all that gunk scraped off, you can just see piles of it. I don't know how that chain was ever clean, because it was basically scraping off dirt. So I've got out as much of the lumps as I can. I'm going to spray it now with degreaser, clean it down, try and get spotlessly clean, or as clean as I can. Okay, that's almost as clean as I can get in around that front sprocket area. So I'll leave it to dry overnight and I'll come back to it tomorrow. Okay, so it's the next morning. All around here is nice and dry. And I'm going to start the engine now. See, can I see any coolant leaking? Or maybe see where it's coming from. Okay, so this morning I think I have discovered the source of my leak. I think it's the clutch slave cylinder, because after I ran the motorcycle, turned it on, left the engine running for a while, let it warm up, turned it off, left it overnight, there is no visible signs of any leaking fluids from the coolant system. So I think the coolant system is all good, so that was a false alarm. And what happened was I noticed some drips which seemed to be coming from the clutch slave cylinder, and when I turn her upside down, let me just turn it around, you can actually see it there. There is fluid building up here. So I'm not really a big fan of these hydraulic clutches, because the seals go on them eventually and they start leaking, and nobody ever replaces them until I actually buy the motorbike. So I can see this one here, it's dripping down this sort of a yellowy fluid as well, so it's the same colour as the coolant. Maybe that's a lesson learned from now on. Whenever I'm buying coolant, don't buy yellow coolant, because it's the same colour as clutch fluid and maybe some other oily fluids, and it can kind of cause a sort of a mix-up when you start seeing the fluids leaking. So what I should do is replace the seals on this clutch slave cylinder. I've done one just a few months ago on my Honda Shadow. This is about the exact same job, I'd say. It costs about €25 for the new seal pack. But because we're in lockdown at the moment with coronavirus, I can't get one from the local shop that easily. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see, can I clean this out first of all and check the condition of the seal, because you can see it's all covered in gunk here. So all those little bits of dirt might be contributing to the seals malfunctioning. First thing I'm going to do is try and take out this center element, replace the seals, or sorry, clean up inside the seals, and then I'm going to put it back in. See, there's a still leak when it's been cleaned out. If it still leaks, then I'm just going to have to replace the seal. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pump this out. Doesn't matter, it's going to waste, it's going to spill down here. Just get this out of the way a little bit. I'm just going to pump it out. You can just watch, I'm just going to pump the clutch, and this seal should just, or this little piston should come out. So let me just pump the clutch so you can see it there. It'll slowly come out. It'll be followed by the brake fluid, so just be careful that you don't get that all over yourself. And just watch out, because under pressure, that brake fluid, it might just spit out and spit onto your eyes. So just be careful. Okay, so it's more or less out there now. It's a bit stiff. Okay. There we go. Okay. So with that out, just a little seal. I can see little bits of dirt on it. I'm going to clean up. I'm going to clean this with just some of this, maybe some chain cleaner. Possibly I'm going to clean it with some brake cleaner. And I'm going to clean inside here, and then I'm going to just check it visually, the status or the condition of the seal, and then I'm going to put it back in. You can see quite a bit of corrosion, so that's an indication possibly that the brake fluid has been in this system for quite a while. Water gets into the brake fluid and it gets down to the bottom of the hydraulic clutch slave cylinder, and it starts to reacts with the metal piston and it starts to corrode, and also this little metal spring. So I'm just going to get that all cleaned up there now, and I'll come back and I'll show you what it looks like then and make a decision. So just to show you, you can see all the little bits of dirt, corrosion basically, little bits of metal, and there's the piston. It's just covered in gunk. So all that disrupts the function of the seal. So inspecting the seal visually, does look a little frayed. Doesn't look perfect. The new one, you can see just where it rubs off the inside of the cylinder. It's a little bit frayed, but it's cleaned up now. It's going to work as well as it can, with no dirt impeding its function. And now I need to clean out the inside of the cylinder, which is absolutely disgusting. So I can leave it on, I just need to spray some of this stuff in. There's some staining left in it, but it's generally pretty clean inside. There's nothing that's going to cause a problem. The side walls are nice and smooth. I don't see any imperfections or dents in the side wall. So lastly, I have the spring here, which I need to clean off. That's good. So that will fit back onto the back of the piston like so. Make sure it's sitting on properly. Yeah, that's good. Actually pretty manky in here, so I'll just soak that up, get rid of it. It's nice and clean there. Let's pump some of that through it. Fill this back up. just coating the seal in brake fluid. Okay, so it's nice and lubricated. And just push it back in. So there's some air there. Just slowly push it back in. It's not too. And at the moment, I don't see any brake fluid leaking past the seal. So it's going to function somewhat. I'm still going to get a new seal for this, but for the moment, while I'm waiting for the new seal, this will do. Okay, and before I reinstall the clutch slave cylinder in its housing here, I want to clean out that housing because it is absolutely manky, as you can see. So I clean out that housing and then I just reinsert the slave cylinder, and it should work okay. I'll monitor it over a week and see if I can spot any leaking fluid. I'll just take the bolts off here, here and here, the 3 bolts that screw it on in a week's time. Take it off and just see what it actually, how it looks. And I'll also bleed the clutch system with brake fluid. It's just, there's a little nut here, a little bleed nut, just where is it? It's there. Oh, there's the little bleed nut. So I just take this little cap off and I will bleed it through that little nut once it's reinstalled, and I'll pull the clutch lever a couple of times a day for about a week while it's sitting in the shed, and just see, then take it off and just see, is it actually leaking any fluid. As I said, that seal in the slave cylinder was not in good condition. It looks like the original seal, so and you really need to replace it at some stage, but I can order that and then collect it in the shop next time I'm in.